Welcome to the WorkJoy Jam podcast. I'm your host, Beth Stallwood, founder of Create WorkJoy. In this episode, I am joined by David Rahman, who is the author of Let It Go, a great book, definitely worth a read, and a subject that I think is really important when we think about WorkJoy is sometimes there's some baggage we are carrying around that is stopping us from fully experiencing the joy. It's holding us back from our careers or what we want to do or what we want to do in life and to achieve. And in this conversation with David, we talk about his own story and how he used some of these techniques that he's talking about to be able to let some stuff go from his world. And he now shares this with many, many people as a way of helping them to get to where they want to go, to get in a really good place to take themselves forward. I really hope you enjoy this conversation with David Rahman. Hello and welcome to the WorkJoy Jam. Today I'm really excited to be joined by David Rahman, and we are going to talk about lots of different things, including the power of letting stuff go. So David will introduce himself better than I could ever introduce himself. So David, over to you. Tell us about yourself and tell us your backstory and how you got to where you are today.
Hello, Beth. Thank you so much. I'm David Rahman. I'm an author and coach, and I've been coaching for almost 20 years, and that's helping people overcome issues, personal issues, self-confidence, self-esteem, and the quick backstories. As a teenager and in my 20s, I had a lot of issues. Emotional issues, mental health issues, in terms of self-esteem, self-confidence, the lack of it, where I fitted in the world. I was stuck, and I think I discovered, Beth, that it all came to a head when I got to university, and I knew I had to change. So I went through university. I ended up becoming an optometrist. And at that time, I still, when you feel there's something not right about this career for me, it's taken me up to a level, but I knew there was something else I wanted to do. So I discovered books on personal development, and then I became a coach. And that's then through many years of coaching, I wrote a book called Let It Go, and I now speak. So I'm a speaker, and I'm always online, doing lives, workshops, etc. So here we are. It's 2021. My book came out in January, and I'm just looking like a lot of people out there to make a difference to this world. Yeah, here we are.
I love that. And such a great story. And thank you so much for being so open about your backstory. And it's, I think, really inspiring for people to hear how when you're a coach and you're somebody who's very visible online, and I'm watching your lives and you're kind of really confident and you look like you've got it all sorted. But to hear that you actually struggled, to hear that you kind of went through some difficult times, I think is something that is really helpful for people to know about, that you're not just here ready. It's been years in the making. There's a lot of hard work gone into that to be able to be who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a story of the stone chipper he's in this marketplace, and he's got this huge stone and he's chipping away at it, and a guy is walking through the market, and he notices the stone chip, and he said, "What are you doing?" And the stone chipper said, "Well, I'm working. I'm pretty sure there's a diamond. There's something special inside the stone." And the guy just looks at him and says, "Well, I've seen you here before in the marketplace. You've been doing this for some time. Good luck." So he walks away. And then about a week later, the guy is walking through the market again, and he sees the stone chipper. And as he looks at the stone chipper, the stone chipper's chipping away, and suddenly this huge stone, this huge block of what looks like granite, just cracks open to reveal the largest diamond they'd ever seen. And the guy said to the stone chipper, "Wow, you've only been here for a couple of months, and look at this. Wow, you're like an overnight success.
Yeah.
But no, it takes time, isn't it? And people think that someone's an overnight success, and people have worked on themselves or worked on their business or projects for years before. But it appears to everyone that it's just happened.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's the work. So when we talk about WorkJoy, I'm always like,
Mm.
it is work. There are things
Yes.
that sometimes are hard. There are things that you have to do. There are things that, in your life and in your work, and separating those two things, I'm not sure is the right thing to do. Putting them together is probably an easier way of thinking about life, because work is
Mm.
part of life. Is that you have to do the work. And I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about going from somebody who kind of in your formative teenage and kind of early 20s years was really struggling with things like self-esteem, with your mental health, with issues,
Mm.
is putting that work in. What kind of things did you do to enable you to build your self-esteem, to build your identity of self-worth, and in those areas? Because I think some practical advice there would be super helpful to our listeners.
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do is the first practical thing to do is to just to be aware and acknowledge I need to change, and to get a piece of paper, like an A4 piece of paper, and just to sit down. And you can do this anywhere. In normal times, you can do this in a coffee shop. Just sit there and
Yeah.
just write down. This is not what I like about my life. So I'm a procrastinator, I'm a people pleaser, or I seem to limit myself when I'm around certain people, or I'm I'm always starting projects but never finishing them. So put down what you perceive is not going right in your life. And it's sometimes that's so freeing just to see it on paper. Right, okay, because you've got to know where the start line is. Where am I going to start from? And then to examine it, because there's often a pattern in there. So the pattern in there could be always needing validation. And where's that coming from? Because you're obviously looking for help from others to make you feel good about you, which means you don't feel good about yourself. So I I really went at that time. I thought, right, I need to change. What do I need to change about me? What's not going right? And it's never ever lasting journey for everyone. Really, we're looking to be a better version of ourselves. So for anyone out there, I would just look at, right, what's not working, and write it down on a piece of paper. What's not working? Don't put it under the rug, because eventually you'll trip up over the rug.
Yeah.
And then I started looking at biographies. I started reading about people who had been on their journeys. So biographies are a great way of starting. If anyone's out there looking to be inspired, just pick up a book or an audiobook and learn how someone overcame their challenges. And
Mm,
often you'll see a little bit of yourself in there.
yeah.
So,
And by hearing someone else's story, you
yes,
will understand what they went through, how that happened,
yes,
what they did. And I'm really loving it. I kind of, it's really aligned to some of the things that I think is sometimes if you just sit there and write some stuff down, there's stuff that comes out of your brain that you didn't know was there
yeah,
by the power of writing it. You're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then sometimes, and I've written down here and I've highlighted it, it's that naming it and saying what it is
yeah,
suddenly is quite freeing, because now you know what it is, you can do something about it.
yeah,
And it does feel like you can take some energy when it's something that kind of feels stressful or inside of you, or doesn't feel right, or feels really uncomfortable in an awkward, horrible, frustrating way. It's really hard to do anything with that, but kind of getting there, naming it, giving yourself a bit of a plan about what you could do, and get some inspiration from other people. That's fantastic advice.
yes.
So
Thank you.
thank you so much for sharing that. And
You're welcome.
you're absolutely right. So, the days, hopefully, maybe by the time this podcast comes out, people will be able to sit in a cafe and, those lovely days
Oh, I
of
love
just
those.
sitting there with a nice drink and
Yes.
considering the world and watching the world go by. How
Yeah.
lovely that would be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that advice. And it's great advice. And whenever I sit there and think, oh, I need to do something about this, or I feel stuck, or that something isn't right, that writing process is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And let's kind of take a step forward now and think about where you are now, and you've written a book about letting stuff go. And when I saw that and I connected with you, David, one of the things I just thought about is such an important topic is being able to let stuff go. And I thought, I need you to come on the podcast. So thank you for agreeing to come along, because I think our audience will love this subject. And what I wanted to do is to kind of dive in with you, if it's okay, and tell me a little bit about how the book came around, and some of your advice around how might people use the subject of letting things go to move forward in their lives.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I started doing a little bit of public speaking at the end of the first decade of the century, and it was very nervous because, as a guy who's a bit of an ambivert, but more of an introvert than anything, and public speaking, it was not something I was ever going to want to do, to be honest, Beth. The last thing on my mind was to stand up in front of people, and it's for most people, it's the biggest phobia of all, getting up and speaking, because you're being judged and you're being possibly being criticized, and you have these feelings of not being good enough. Am I going to fluff my lines, etc.? So I had to get over myself because I wanted to reach more people. And in order for me to stand up in front of a group of people, whatever size it is, I knew I had to get past myself. And I knew that because I had this first speaking engagement at a hotel in Cardiff. And the night before, I had this massive panic attack. And I'd woken up in the middle of the night, and I thought somebody was knocking my door, but it was actually my heart. It was beating so loudly that I knew I was having a panic attack. Obviously, I've been a coach. I'd help people deal with that severe anxiety and panic attack. So I knew exactly what was happening to me. So the next day I did my talk. It wasn't good. It wasn't. It was the opposite of good. But I knew I had to learn. So the first thing I knew I had to learn, because the thing I wanted to do was to help people understand that they're better than they think they are. They are worthy, and we've all got this purpose in life, and we're on this planet to do something. Now, it could be being a mum, which is amazing. It could be owning a company, being a writer, a musician, whatever it is. We've all got a gift, and our joy in this life is to discover what it is and to live it. So after that time that I was on stage and it wasn't good, I knew there was something about it that I need to do more of this, because I'm going to be letting a lot of people down if I don't get up and speak. So I got up and I started speaking, and I started doing workshops. I started doing courses. I started working with UK government, delivering these courses. Initially, it was free because I just wanted to help. And I got a contract, and I started doing this program, which is the forerunner to the Let It Go program. And people's lives were just transforming. It was bonkers. And without going too much into it, there was people who had suffered abuse, people who had suffered mental health issues since they were their childhood, some people who had had divorces, people who had been bullied in work, or people who just didn't have any confidence and they didn't know why. So there's a whole spectrum of people and ages, which is interesting, because there were ages from teenagers all the way up to the 60s. And I was delivering this content, and people's lives were just changing, or shall I say, the way they think, or the way they were thinking and feeling about themselves was changing, and they were taking different actions then. And people were starting their own business. People were leaving relationships where they were afraid to leave the relationship previously because of insecurity reasons, and all sorts of things were going on. And people's life, they were transforming their bodies because they were eating differently and being committed to change. And one day I thought, well, I'd like to put this in a format such as a book. People were saying this should be in a book. This should be taught in schools, and that's how it transpired. The process of Let It Go. I was finding out that people were letting go
Yeah.
of stuff that they were carrying in what I term the mental rucksack. They were just freeing themselves. For me, let it go is freedom. That's what it means.
Amazing. Before we go on to some of the things about how we do these, I've just got a few things that really came to mind when you were talking about it. So I thought I'd reflect on a few things. Is one thing I really love about that story is so many people, I think if you were in that situation where you've had a panic attack the night before, which I think there is such a thing, and I've had a few in my life, and I do not wish them on anybody. They are horrendous things. And I know some people suffer them in a chronic way. But I think there's something like a panic attack hangover, is that you feel awful, like physically awful for days, weeks after one of those things. Something about like the adrenaline, all the stuff that's coursing through your body afterwards. Awful. But you carried on and you did it, and you accepted that it wasn't as good as you wanted it to be. But rather than going, hang on a minute, I'm an introvert who doesn't want to do these things, I'm just going to go kind of retreat back and not do this. You're like, I'm going to go and do more of it. I'm going to go and practice it. I'm going to go and do the work to get better at this, because it's really important that I do it. And I think that takes real courage to do that, to kind of go, actually, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to push through this. So well done, and thank you for pushing through it. And I think there's a lesson for a lot of us there, is that just because we're not brilliant at something the first time we do it doesn't mean we don't stop. We should stop. We can keep learning, we can keep growing, we can make that happen. And there's a lot of joy to be had in the process, but there's also that scary stuff, isn't there, about, I'm going to put myself out there in front of people, it's going to be hard, people are going to judge me. And I think, probably reflecting on some of the things that you said earlier as well, is we often see I think, through social media and different things, we see the outcome of many, many years' work and the perfection that some of those things bring, versus the reality of what gets you there. And it's so nice, I've had this where you go, I really wasn't very good there and I want to work on it. So that was just a reflection from me. And then really thinking about this idea of a way and your method and the content that you use in transforming people's lives in so many different ways. So a spectrum of different people. So it's not like this only works for, if you're a woman in your 20s, there's a kind of a wide range there, and so many different things in their backgrounds that could stop them, limit them, making it happen, but actually finding a way through it. So
yes,
and I'm loving this idea, and I've like circled it about 12 times with my pen. So it's clearly this is how I do things. Like if it gets circled, I'm like, this is on my brain now.
yeah.
Talk to me more about your mental rucksack, because I'm loving that as a term, and I'm sitting there thinking about my mental rucksack and all the stuff that's in there. So can you explore that a little bit for me?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, when we're born with this beautiful baby, and it's just when we look at a baby, it's like, unconditional love, because that baby's not judging, just looking at you, wants to be fed, he wants to sleep, wants to poo in his nappy, but it's just free. And then, we become this little infant, and then we're told not to do this. We're told, be quiet. Children shouldn't be heard. Money doesn't grow on trees. We're told stuff like, you're not as good as your brother was when he was in school. And we go through this period of change under the age of 10, and then between 10 and 20, where we experience this thing called life. And it's joy a lot of the time, and it can be traumatic a lot of the time, where we're experiencing failure. Because failure could be, we've asked a girl out and we're 14 years old and she laughs at us. Or failure could be, we sit in a science exam and half the class passes and we don't pass. And it's then
I would be in that not passing thing on the science exam for sure.
And then we have these moments where we feel amazing, and we have these moments where we feel let down. We feel this. If I could give you a little story, and it's a true story. It was back in the 80s, and at the time, and still now, I love football and I love Liverpool. That's my team, and I've followed them since '77. So, giving away my age. So, I was very keen to have a Liverpool bag, because back in the 80s, these sports bags had teams on them like Aston Villa, Man City, Liverpool, etc. So my parents, in their infinite wisdom, had been shopping, and they came back home. And my brothers are younger than me, so I was the oldest, and I was 13 at the time. So they brought these 3 bags randomly: Liverpool, Man City, and Aston Villa. And my parents knew they knew I loved Liverpool. But what did they do? They said to my brothers, "Well, which bag do you want first?" Well, that's the youngest. And then he said, "Liverpool." Well, the other asked the other brother, because I've got 2 brothers, "Which bag do you want?" Aston Villa. So I had this Man City bag I had to go to school with. Embarrassed, shame. Yeah, and we can laugh. I laugh at it now, but looking back, I was traumatized because it meant a lot to me to have the Liverpool bag because that's my team. And so I had to have this, that was like a badge of shame. So I carried that in my mental rucksack, for years. So we have these emotions in the mental rucksack of where we failed in life or where we were disappointed, where we felt not good enough. I remember being in a school bus and we were approaching Longleat and I was at the back of the bus. I didn't hear the teacher tell everybody to be quiet. So I carried on talking and she heard me and she shouted out to the back of the bus something bad at me, and I felt humiliated. I felt ashamed. But I didn't know I had locked that emotion into and carried it in my mental rucksack. I didn't know I'd carried it until I was about 40 years old. When this feeling of shame and embarrassment and humiliation I was carried around with me was triggered off by someone saying my name. And I didn't know why, when somebody said my name, I felt embarrassed, shamed, and humiliated. And I, I, I continually train, and I still work on myself a lot. So I'm always working with coaches, mentors, going on programs, courses, days in personal development. I love it. And this is back about 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. I was about 40. And we did this exercise and I realized that shame and embarrassment that I was still in my mental rucksack was linked to my name. And it was linked to that bus episode on the bus where she'd screamed my name to shut up. And I felt so humiliated and embarrassed at that time that I'd locked it in, associated my name with embarrassment and humiliation. So we go through life, Beth, and we've had these experiences. It could be a throwaway experience because I remember working with a dentist client, a high-profile dentist client recently, and she said to me that, well, it transpired through one of the sessions that she said she's always trying to keep conversations interesting. I said, really? Said, yeah, I always feel I have to keep conversations going, no time to pause, and make them super interesting, David, and it's exhausting me. So we went through her life, and she had a memory. Suddenly, something came up, and it was 9 years old, and a girl in her class called her boring. Oh, you're boring, you're dull. And that energy she carried with her. And she had made up her mind at that age, I don't want anybody to ever call me dull and boring again. And I have to now make conversations interesting, otherwise people are going to think I'm boring. And she realized that. She had this massive aha moment. She'd pulled it out of her mental rucksack. So that's the challenge now.
Yeah.
To find out.
And it's so interesting and talking about those stories, and it really kind of brings it home and makes it real when you talk about your own personal story and also the story of your client there. And I'm thinking now of like 50 examples from my own mental rucksack. Because that feeling and what you associate it with, even if, so I'm thinking about your example of being on that bus, that teacher will not remember that situation. Because at that time you're an annoying student who's not doing what's being told, and she's probably shouted at thousands over the years of students not doing what they're told, right? Because teachers get annoyed with students because they're annoying. But it's a really interesting one, and what I'm interested about that is how closely associated with your identity and your name and your who you are that is. And that's a real scary thing when someone says your name and you feel shame. It's like, well, your name is something that people say lots of times a day. So how is that? And there's a really interesting one. And then I was smiling to myself when you were talking about the idea of the person who you were coaching who has associated something about being boring. I feel very personally the same thing. Like and I'm sitting here going, oh, I need to deal with that in my mental rucksack. And I remember having a conversation with my husband the other day. It's like, don't you dare call me boring. And he was like, okay, I won't. And he was like, where does that come from? Like, I got no idea, but there's definitely something in me about not being boring. But there are so many things, and little things, but that we're holding on to because we haven't addressed them, or even we don't even know they're there, but they're driving some kind of feeling or behavior within ourselves. And I also imagine, I'm just thinking about this from a different angle, is there are also, I imagine, in our mental rucksack, as many, if not hundreds more, positive associations that we have, but because they don't bring us down, or we maybe just don't notice them as much. So what are the positive memories that we have of kind of feeling supported and loved, and all of those different areas? And I'm really interested about whether we do enough of exploring the stuff that supports us for who we are, as well as the stuff that is not helping us. So I'm going to get to a question. I was rambling on with my reflections for a minute there, because I am now like exploring my own mental rucksack of all of the things that, I'm just thinking about some that I know many of the people that I've worked with over the years and many of my friends struggle with, are things like, don't boast about stuff, that it's not cool to boast about stuff, which means we then don't ever celebrate the things we've achieved, and we don't tell people the good news. There's all kind, like, don't show off. I had that one a lot when I was a kid. Don't show off, Beth.
Sure.
But there's so many different things that are there, and the messages that kind of land really deeply. So the question I'm going to get to now, and I am getting there, is, so what can we do when we've discovered this? So I think, understanding we've got a mental rucksack, we can probably find some stuff when we get the feelings. What is some of your, and again, I'm going to put this in a bit of a caveat that this will probably be like a week's worth of podcasts, just talking about what to actually do and what's in the book and all that kind of stuff. But what are some of the really practical things that we can do to start to let some of that stuff go?
Yeah, sure. The first thing, I'm all about awareness. Practical, you can put an elastic band on one of your wrists, and you want to know, because people tend to overrate themselves on a level of how positive they are as a person, or how good they are as a person, and often we can see things in others which they can't see. So you might sit down, Beth, with a couple of friends and realize that this person likes the sound of a voice. This person is always moaning and blaming life. So we can see it, but they can't see it. So a really powerful tool to do is to put an elastic band on one of your hands, one of your wrists, and catch yourself over a 7-day period, blaming, complaining, judging, criticizing, wanting validation, people pleasing. Catch yourself and flick it, because every time you do that, you're going to send a signal, a pain signal, up to your brain to associate now your bad habit, behavior, thinking with pain. And a lot of people have just done that technique, and they've managed to delete stuff out of their vocabulary which they didn't actually know or realize they were saying. Because our words, if you think of the conscious mind, subconscious mind, the latest studies show that between 90 and 95% of our behavior is unconscious. It's just automated. We get up the same side of bed, we go to the same bathroom, we do the same things, and the normal times, and only 5% is conscious. So this snaps you back into conscious reality, where you're looking at, who am I as a person? And immediately from that, you can go about stopping some of the stuff you're doing, because there's a lot of stuff that we do that we don't know of. So that's highly practical in terms of
super
what you need to do.
practical.
Another
I'm sitting here
thing,
looking at my wrist that actually has a hairband on, and I could do it right now. Done.
yeah,
Ooh, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
another version of that technique is just to pinch your hand. So just pinch it
Okay.
every time. There's a. I was going to mention. What was going to mention? Oh yes, you could even. A lot of people, like, there's a saying. Sometimes you wouldn't talk to your dog the way you talk to yourself. We just criticize. We have these negative thoughts about ourselves, resentment. We play over scenarios, maybe a conversation we had earlier that day, and we just can't seem to let go of it. So a powerful technique, very simple, is if you're finding yourself in a frenzy, it's almost like a feeling, you are attacking yourself, critical, blaming, and you can catch yourself doing that because you become emotional. Our emotions follow our thinking. So text yourself. Sit down, take a deep breath, and text yourself exactly how you were just talking to yourself. Now, what this does, two things. It's quite powerful. It slows your mind down because you've got a text. So take time, just text yourself. And the text could be something like, why did I just say that during the meeting? Or I keep, this diet is not working for me, just like all the others. And when we text ourselves these thoughts, number one, we're slowing our mind down. Number two, sometimes we're just absolutely shocked at how we're talking to ourselves. Because it's become automated, we have now brought it to the conscious level. So that's immediately people have just done that technique, and they've been not only shocked, surprised, but grateful that they can see and make that change starting now. Those are two very practical techniques people can
Yeah,
do.
I love that one. And it's so true,
Thank you.
isn't it? That so many times I always think about this, like, would you talk to your best friend that way? Is that what you would be saying to
Mm-hmm.
them? And you're like, no way. I'd be telling them, no, you're fine. You can sort it out. There's practical ways to, you'd be giving advice and doing really good advice, but it's so hard when we get stuck in our head. So I love that about text yourself and then read it, because you'll be able to read it with a more calmer,
Yes.
um, conscious,
Yeah.
logical mind that goes, hang on a minute,
Yeah.
are those things actually true, or are they blown out of all proportion?
Yeah.
I always talk about, have you made a mountain where a molehill once stood?
Yeah.
And the answer when I ask myself that question is usually yes.
Yes.
There's very rarely an actual mountain when there's something going on in my head. So I love that idea. It's really great. And I'm laughing at myself here because you're talking about, would you talk to your dog that way? Absolutely not. My dog is like the best thing in the entire world, and
Oh,
she only ever gets praise. I am one of those
yes.
dog mummies, and I'm like, you're the best in the whole world.
Yes.
I said to my husband the other day that our dog, if she had, if she was a human, she would have the biggest self-esteem
Oh,
ever of any person ever invented. So yeah, there is definitely something there. So two great things. So like associate it, have that kind of wrist thing or a pinch thing that kind of associates a bad habit with pain.
yes.
That'll help you kind of work through it. And then this text yourself one, I am totally going to give it a go. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Great idea. And
Thank you.
then just get that kind of slow down, logical thinking about it.
Yes.
Brilliant. And then when you kind of are in that zone,
Yes.
because habits are really hard to break, aren't
Yes.
they? It's not like you go, oh, hang on, I've flicked my wrist and I've written down something on a text
Yes.
message. I'm now done. I
Yes.
fixed
No.
myself.
No. No.
What's the next step?
Yeah. We're gonna think about, when do we start thinking? It is literally going back into life and examine what you do. And the first thing I always um, think about my clients and teach them is the morning mindset, because how we start the day actually does progress how we end the day. Morning mindset transformed my life, and it's something that's so powerful. Even though people out there might be thinking, well, I'm not a morning person. Well, not until now, because our morning does really, my father used to say, morning shows the day. I know what he means, because if I've had a bad morning or I haven't done my morning routine, the day isn't as good.
Yeah.
The day doesn't finish strong. So the morning mindset, and how do people start this? Well, first of all, um, I never have notifications. In fact, my phone is not in my room. Phone is not in the bedroom. No tech in the bedroom, because the bedroom's for sleeping and other stuff, but it's not for working, and it's not for tech. So if you want to wake up, just get an alarm clock. So the average Joe these days, Joe or Joanne, they pick up the phone, check the time, and then suddenly discover that it's 7:30, and then they discover they've got notifications, so they start obeying the notifications, which is reading them, and then you become at the behest of the person who sent you them. You're on their agenda, so you're looking at a WhatsApp group or Facebook Messenger or scrolling, and suddenly you've wasted time because your energy is going into an online separate universe, which is separate to your life. It's not you, but you've been distracted, and that's a huge problem. So you're never going to change if you're going to continue doing this every morning. So put that away and take it out the room. Um, Exercise is a big thing for me. Anyone can exercise. They say, I've got time, wake up earlier. I've got children, wake up earlier. There's 1,440 minutes in the day. You can do it. People say, I can go an hour in the morning. Well, there's apps out there, which 4-minute apps called Tabata, or the 8Fit app. These are designed for you to do exercise in under 12 minutes. So you've done something, because your body's biochemistry has to change first thing in the morning, because our level of cortisol first thing in the morning is at its highest between 5 and 7, between 5 and 7. The cortisol, which is the stress hormone, is at its highest. So you don't want to wake up in a bad mood or in a slightly edgy mood. So you've got to try and lower those levels of cortisol and stress hormones. How do you do that? Exercise will do that for you
Yeah.
immediately. So we've got to go far deeper than just thinking about what do I need to let go of. You've got to start changing your body from the inside out, and your mind. Your mind will follow. And if you keep on doing this morning mindset routine, you start seeing stuff happen, magic happen in your life. You start feeling good. Because if you start feeling good, you start going to work more focused, more concentrated, more in charge of your life. Start making better decisions. You start to unravel a higher version of yourself. And the stuff that you want to let go of will start to let go of. The process starts. You start to let go of. That's part of the process. Beth, we can talk about this all day, because it really is something where people say, why don't self-help books work? Why don't I did this course. It worked for the first couple of months, and then I went back to my normal self. Of course, because your usual self is there. Your identity, who you've identified with, is going to stop you from changing until you decide to change your identity, which is going to still be the same Beth as before, but the better version, the upgrade. Like when Mercedes brings out a new car, it's an upgrade on the last car.
Yeah.
When Apple upgrades their phone, they upgrade, but we don't upgrade ourselves. What we try and do is put a little bandage over the wound and hope it's going to heal by itself. So it's got to start with us changing our behavior and our habits. And you talked about habits earlier on, and habits, science has found out that it takes around 66 to 100 days to make a habit permanent. So that's why somebody say, oh, I did the 7-day confidence challenge. I feel so much better. A month later, they're back to the normal self.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because when I talk about WorkJoy quite a lot, people come to me and go, okay, so what's the quick win on this? I'm like, there is no quick win.
Yeah.
It is about
Yes.
doing the work.
Yes.
And the work becomes joyful
Yes.
at that like 60-day to 100-day thing. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, hang on a minute. The work has now become something that is
Yes.
bigger than the work. It's become a habit. It's become a routine. It's become who I am. And, talking about a morning mindset and a morning routine and things that work for you, I definitely know for sure that if I sit there and I like have a morning routine of things that I do for my brain, and I do things, and so many people think these things are cheesy, and I don't care that they think they're cheesy, because if they work, I'm all up for them. But I do something about gratitude,
Yeah.
some kind of affirmation and some kind of mantra in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's like one liner. It is not complicated,
Yeah.
because you want to keep it simple. So if I do those things in the morning, and I know for sure if I exercise in the morning versus exercise in the afternoon or the evening, I feel better all day
Yes.
if I've done it in the morning.
Yeah.
And you're right. Sometimes I do 10 minutes on the bike and it's 10 minutes and it's done.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go for an hour's walk with my dog
Yeah.
and it's done. But whatever I do, I know for sure I feel better, and I feel more able to, and this is another thing we talk about with WorkJoy, I feel more able to embrace the challenges
Yes.
versus be scared by them.
Yes.
I feel more courageous. I feel more confident within myself. I feel that I can use my strengths. I feel okay about the stuff I'm not good at when I've done some of those things, because they remind me of who I am. They give you a really great start. So I do believe in a morning mindset, and I also believe, and again, a whole nother topic we could talk about for ages, that getting a good night's sleep is one of the best things that you can do for any kind of joy.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. There's a great book in there for anybody who wants to read the book. Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep.
Oh, yeah, love it.
Yeah, brilliant book. But there's so much you could talk about, because you want to change your life, you have to change who you think you are, how you fit in, how you think you fit in this world, and what you were meant to do. And things will
Yeah,
just change quickly. And I'm quite a visual person, and our own senses, around 70-80% of the information we get is through the visual senses. So for anyone out there, just one more tip that you can do is, on a post-it note, write, I love you, I value you, I respect you, on post-it notes, and look at them every morning. Look at them every morning for about 60 days and watch your self-esteem rise. You
that's a
can't,
great one. Like put it on your mirror or
yeah, put it in
something,
your
somewhere
mirror,
where
your
you
bathroom
see it
mirror.
in the morning.
You don't have to, stand before and pray towards it. You just look at it, and it will sink in, because we use it in everyday language. Oh, that's sunk in. So don't try and force anything. Just let it sink in, and it takes time, and you have to keep on as a lifelong process. And therefore, your self-esteem will start to rise, and you start to do things that you didn't think were possible, and accept compliments, for example. Yeah,
That one I've been working on for a number of years, and I think I'm getting there. I
awesome.
think I'm getting there. It started I really, really struggled with it. I used to do the whole deflect it
Ah,
really badly. I was a total deflector of a compliment.
yeah.
And then it worked, like after the first year of trying it and really working on it, making it a big personal development goal of mine, I managed to say thank you after about a year.
Brilliant.
And now I think I'm getting there. And
Brilliant.
my balance now is don't get too big headed about it. But it does make a big difference, because if I'm giving a compliment to somebody else, say David, I'm saying to you, and I know I said this the first time we had a conversation, it's like, David, you have the most lovely accent, and I could listen to you talk all
Thank you.
day. So that's a nice compliment to pay to you. If somebody says something like that to me, but if you said to me, oh no, I don't, then it kind of diminishes the
Yes.
feedback that I've given to
Yeah.
you. So it makes us both feel bad
Yeah.
when I'm trying to make you feel good about something.
Yeah.
So for me, when I looked at it, it's about how you're responding to the other person and what the impact is on them. I was like, I got to stop doing that. It's not helpful. I need to change that. So there's that awareness and understanding of the impact on you and other people,
Yeah.
I think is really great.
Yeah.
Now, I am looking at the clock, and we could definitely, I reckon, another 4 or 5 days fully talking. We could go through all of
Yes.
this, and I would love every minute of it.
Yeah.
But I do want to
Okay.
make sure we finish up on time. So
Okay.
I love what you've told us so far, but I'm going to nip in now and do some quick fire questions if you're up for
Yep.
it. Fantastic. So, question one, and this is a personal one.
Okay.
So, for you in your life, in your
Mm.
world, what is always guaranteed to bring you a little bit of work joy?
Freedom.
Oh, love that. And tell me, just for our listeners, because I think everyone will
Mm.
probably have a different definition of that. When you say freedom, what's your definition of it?
Freedom is to wake up every day, and do what you love. And
Yeah,
on the days where it didn't go right, to understand tomorrow I will make a comeback.
yeah, I love that. Because real life, like not everything goes right every day.
No, no, but we have the choice how we respond to it,
Yeah,
and I believe that it can be a game changer for many people's lives. That you have a choice to change.
yeah, great, love that. Second question: what book are you currently reading?
I am currently reading a book called Reality Transurfing by a Russian neuroscientist called, um, I can't remember his name, to be honest, but it's like 800 pages long, all about neuroscience change.
Oh, cool.
Yes, it's fantastic, to be honest.
If you let me know who it's from, we'll put it in the show notes so that people can go and have a look
Sure,
at that
sure,
one.
sure.
Sounds
Yeah.
fascinating. Next one is looking back through your
Mm,
life, what is one really amazing or useful or impactful bit of advice that somebody has given you
mm.
that you find yourself always coming back to and using?
Okay, let me think. Um, Actually, I can think back to recently. There's loads of things, but I'll think back to something recently where I was speaking to one of my mentors, and we were on a Zoom, and she said, every time you feel resistance being stuck, something in your body, you're feeling tension, it's because you are thinking the wrong thoughts, such as wrong thought, this isn't going my way, it should. So when we're blaming or complaining, any of those negative thoughts that we were talking about is called resistance. So we're feeling resistance, we feel it in our breath, we feel it in tension on neck or shoulders, and to catch yourself and bring yourself back in the moment, because it is definitely the moment that counts. And when we are living a life where we're expecting things now, such as impatience, you're going to feel that, and it's going to affect your entire day. So that was recent advice, and it brought me back into the moment, and it's
Yeah.
powerful.
It's a really good bit of advice. I'm really reflecting on that. I think I'm going to take that one.
Take it.
Love
Of course,
it.
yes.
Love the sharing of these things.
Yes.
Okay. And then what for you, and to give our audience, would be one super practical bit of advice that people could take and do something today, tomorrow, the next day, that you think would help them build a little bit of joy into their life?
100%. I'm going to go back to what you mentioned earlier on gratitude. It's something, it's part of my routine in the morning, but you can do it any time of the day. So gratitude is an energy. And if people out there could just think about it as every time you are grateful for something and you focus on being grateful for little things or big things, you'll see more of it and you'll feel better. Start it first in the morning. And the question you can ask yourself at any time of the day is, what could I be grateful for right now? What could I be grateful for? And what that does is causes your brain to go looking for things to be grateful for. And then your energy changes, your mood changes, and you can immediately, by the process of cognitive dissonance, what psychologists say, that you can't think a negative or a positive thought at the same time. It's got to be one or the other. That's how the brain works. So when you are in that stream of gratitude, it can be life-changing at any time of the day. Life-changing. So you could be there lunchtime and say, what could I be grateful for about this morning? It might not even have been a good morning. You'll find the gift in the morning.
It puts your brain on seek it out mode, doesn't it?
Yes.
To really look for those moments.
Yes.
And even if they're, I always say, even if they're like the tiniest little thing, it does change your mood. It really does.
100%. You could.
And it's so little things, isn't it? I'm just thinking about when we first came on before we started recording here. I said to you, there's sunshine coming in my window. And I feel really grateful for that today. And like, that's a tiny little thing, but such a lovely thing to have.
Yes, 100%. You're outside, and if you're running in the morning, I often do 5K runs in the morning, and I just stop because I live near the sea. I stop and I just breathe, and it's just that moment of, I'm glad I'm alive. I'm so glad I'm alive.
I love it. Thank you. So I am really grateful, on the thing of gratefulness, for you for coming on the podcast, for talking us through your advice and your story, and your stories I think have been really inspiring to me, and I'm definitely going to take a few things away with me. Where can our lovely listeners find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. They can look at my website, david-rahman.com, and they can start on Instagram, really. I'm always doing live broadcasts on there, and I put on things daily to help people change the way they feel about themselves in the world. And they can search out my book. It's on Amazon or every other bookstore out there, and that's called Let It Go. So please join the journey.
Brilliant. Thank you. And we will put all of those details in the show notes on our social media as well, so that people can link straight through. David, thank you so much for today. It's been great to have you here on the WorkJoy Jam, and I'm looking forward to seeing where your journey goes next. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode with David Rahman. I found it a really interesting conversation, and he's got so much to share around how to practically move on, to let some stuff go, to help yourself. I love his phrase of the mental rucksack, the stuff that you're carrying around with you. And I've just got that image in my mind now, and it's going to really help me, I think, to consider, actually, am I carrying some baggage that I don't need to carry around with me? Or can I let some of that stuff go and be grateful to be able to let it go? I love some of the practical advice, things like, the old elastic band on the wrist to remind yourself and to catch yourself. And so much of this stuff is habitual, right? It's the stuff that's just in our brains because that's the way we do it. And it does take a lot of time and a lot of effort to really change a habit. And there's been quite a lot around for a number of years that it takes 21 days to change a habit. But obviously, looking at the research there, sometimes it can take up to 100 days. You've got to keep going and persevering and work through the difficult bits. There is no one quick answer. I love how he really focuses on gratitude, and it's something that you will have seen out there in a big way. There are so many gratitude journals and things that you can do here. But one thing I really love about gratitude is this idea of what could you be grateful for today versus what are you grateful for? And the could be, I think, gives it that sense of, even if you aren't, maybe you could work towards it, or maybe there's something that you could start seeing. It's quite a bit less pressure, I think, on ourselves to, I must be grateful for something. But what could I be grateful for? It's a much more open way of considering it. So I am definitely taking that away myself. So many great things from David. And if you do want to find out more, obviously he has his book. He's also really great at doing lives on Insta with really practical advice. So do follow him on the Instagram. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Create WorkJoy. We're also on Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn. If you'd like to find more about Create WorkJoy, do head to our website, www.createworkjoy.com. And on there, you can find out more about our signature 16-week coaching program to help you create and cultivate more joy in your working life. And also about some upcoming things like Club WorkJoy, our community of people who are all working towards more joy in their life. Thank you very much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. There are plenty more, so go and have a listen and see who else might inspire you.